go. Gonna fix this shit. Okay. Okay. All right, I think we're ready to go. Let's pull up the old trusty web browser here and let's get rolling. Turn this down. I hope my audio is okay. Hopefully somebody lets me know. Okay, yesterday when we left off, I had a big problem bringing over this array. So on the server, I was having a problem. So I generated a bunch of lists or arrays, lists of words in these various arrays here in this constructor, in this word bank class. And they do all have to be unique because they are independent. The words that the blue team gets, the red team, the words that are neutral, aka bystanders, and the single assassin word. So then I wrote a little for loop here, which pulls a random word, assigns it based on the team that it's at, and then it removes it from the array. And that happens over and over again, so that the same word in each array can never be used. Like the switch statement when it gets pulled. So like, for example, if it pulls out Hollywood and adds it to the blue team, well, then it's going to remove it from that array, but it's going to be random each time. There are 30 words in each array, but we only need 25. So that sort of guarantees that on each game, even if you're using the same word list, which all sort of relate to each other as well. For example, like ship and box are kind of similar. So is port, maybe even like, I guess center, spike, deck are all kind of similar, and then you're going to get the same words that are in the same realm every time you play the game, and it's going to make sense. So that is the point. Hold on, I think there are some streaming issues. Let me check real quick my sound. Make sure this is good. Okay, no, I think it's fine. So maybe it's okay. All right. So that's the idea with that. And then, so what's the idea behind this game? Good question. I think I have a link here, Wiki Codenames. It's based on a board game that looks like this, called Codenames, but it will be played in a web browser with avatars. And actually I can display what that looks like. I'll fire up the server real quick. Okay, it's fired up. So you can see, and for some reason not generating. We'll have to fix. We'll have to see what's going on there. Maybe you just need to refresh. Maybe you need to restart the server. Maybe I didn't save. That'll be annoying, won't it? Okay. So as you can see, when a client fires up, it's put into this little world here, and these are all tiles, and each tile represents a different tile, or a different word rather. So this guy is on the blue team, and basically there will be other players that join, and they might be on the blue array team. They'll get to choose. So this guy is on the red team, for example, and he's going down, and you can see this is parallel, so both characters move simultaneously. And then the spy master will give a code name, which can't be these names, but something similar to it, and then a number of words that he wants his team to guess. And then all the players will walk to that tile. They'll lock in their choice. You can see it confirms here. I see it over here. And then they'll either be right or wrong. So they can either choose correctly for their team's thing, incorrectly, and get another team's word, or they can get a neutral bystander, which is nothing, or the assassin word, which ends the game. But if you read the wiki, then it might make more sense to you. So hopefully that helps. Okay, yeah, so I think we're good. Let me turn this music back on here. Okay, so that's what we're doing. Anyway, got a little distracted there. So going back, no, I'm not going to terminate. Actually, yeah, I am going to do that. Okay, oops. Okay, so good, got this started back up. So yesterday the problem was I generated that list, and then in the server, what I did is create a new object based on that class, which would contain all the lists in there. So all the lists in this new variable would have the generated list of words, each team's words, the neutral words, and the assassin word to generate the tiles 25, 25. So actually each time we restart the server too, it's going to be a new set of words, right? So you can see like right now it's cast dog, wind scimitar, olive oil, etc. Now we see Moscow, pumpkin, Bermuda jet. It's going to be randomized every time. And actually the reason that we did it like this is that players can't cheat. Like they won't be able to open the console and inspect, all they can see is like they'll only be able to see the words in here. And then all of the validation happens server side. So that was sort of the problem we were solving, because if we just sent the whole array or the whole object as it is, then they would be able to see, okay, these words are, if they were savvy, these words are for the blue team, these words are for red, and essentially be able to cheat. So this sets the by setting them only the neutral words and then making them send their choice back to the server and having it validate there, it sets the stage for server-side authority, server-side validation, where they're not going to be able to cheat that otherwise. So that's the idea. Anyway, yesterday we were having a problem creating that, which actually, so you can see here we extract the neutral word list, not the one with the teams, and then we send that word list to the client here in this emit function. And over here, I was having a problem catching it and having it show up. And I guess what the problem is it was getting caught, which we saw for like an hour yesterday. It was getting caught correctly and it was logging correctly. And I even, I ignored my own comment. I said, it needs to be ready at the same time. And I thought, okay, it's gonna need to be wrapped in a promise. And I was like sitting there fumbling with it, and I never wrapped it in a promise. So the problem was, it was actually like this stuff all down here was getting created and generated before this was completed, before the word list, before the word list was getting, the request for the word list was getting sent to the server, and before it was getting sent back. So essentially, like when I was trying to log it down here, I couldn't actually read it into the function or the for loop, which I actually moved up in here now. So this is fixed, and the reason it's fixed is because I actually generate the world here now in the same function. So it actually will never call for it until it gets that word list, and that's how I fixed it. And it's unfortunate that it took so long. And I think like a big reason that it took so long, aside from the fact that I didn't listen to my own comments and wasn't paying attention, is because like the debugging was really hard to read. Like down here in the console, it said it was of type object, and it looked like an object, sort of like this does. But this is actually of type array, even though if we logged type of word list, it would say object. So I guess arrays in JavaScript are logged as type of type object, which is like pretty unfortunate. Just checking one thing. Okay, should be good. Okay, I think anyway. Okay, so fix that. So today the plan is to, I have sort of limited time. I'm having some folks around for New Year's. So the plan is to kind of go through this, step through, clean up some of this code. For example, like right off the bat, you can see that the player walks under the text. I don't really want that. And that's like one of the easiest fixes I think that there's going to be to make here. So I think all I have to do is call this after the text gets pushed, or the character gets drawn and stuff, because the character's made down here. So I think all I have to do is call this down here. And I think if I do that, now the character will render over the text. He doesn't. Okay. So this might be one of those things again where this is ready before this is. So that's maybe something I have to look at the server. Why does this happen? So he gets created, it gets emitted, new player. So this does come after. So maybe it's just, this is going to be, I think this is going to have to be wrapped into a promise and show up even after the fact. Or like, I guess worst case scenario, we can tell it on the client to render it above. It's not the biggest of deals, but it is something that I'm going to have to address. I need to make a to-do. I should have done this a long time ago. To-do.md. Render players over text. And I actually am not sure. I wonder if it will render other players on top, or if I need to restart the server for that to take place. I just want to check that before I get crazy. Okay, so we should get a new set of words. And we do. And no, we're still under it. So I wonder if it renders other players in the game over or under it. So if I move on this screen over here, let's see here, what happens over here? What does this guy see? He sees him under it. And then does he see this guy on top? Yeah, this guy's on top of the words. Okay, so it is about when it happens on the client and when things get generated. Because this is already generated by the time a new player connects, so it renders the second player or any additional players. Right now this takes unlimited players, right? So if I put a new guy here, you can see the other two players are already in there, and then everybody moves, no problem. So, and that's why. And so both of these players on this other guy's screen will be on top of the text, because that is already generated, the word list, when these guys are added. So that's why that happens. So that's something I'll have to fix. For the render player, render client player over text, others are fine. Okay. Make this little list. And now we can do just some like quick code cleanup for today, I think. So just going to step through it because I have a lot of comments in here I'm not using. Some I do like to leave so that I don't forget and remember my thought process when I come back through. Sometimes like I travel or I spend a lot of time doing work, and when I come back I forget what I was doing. So like the comments and where I put stuff, like these aren't that important. With these comments not here, like anybody reading this will know that these are global game variables and all that stuff, but I leave it here for me because sometimes I forget when I look back. I try not to comment like redundant stuff, but I do try to like say why I'm doing it, right? Not like var self, like socket and self setup. Well, you need self setup, need to assign the scene object function functions this to self in order to in a nested function. So that's a good comment because like if somebody saw like you already have this, why would you assign it to self? It's so you can use it down here in these nested functions. Like you can't pass this object down here, even though we need it, because this would refer to this function. So we have to assign the scene, which is set here, and you can see we have the create function, which gets made here. So we have to assign the scene functions this to a variable called self, and then now we can pass that on to the rest of the embedded functions or nested functions as they're called that we make. So some of this is all testing. This is from before. Ooh, don't need it. Down here, I already said this, and I tried putting it lower, which will need to be fixed. This will be another to-do. This is the get word list from server. So we have two things that we need to do. Wrap this in a promise in case it takes longer than expected. We saw that on the first time when I first generated the world, it wasn't ready. So I definitely need to do that. And I need to ensure it only happens after the client's player before the client's rendered. Or sort it like indexing, or just make sure the player is always on top with layering question mark. Okay, I'm gonna step through this otherwise real quick. Up here we got some global constants. So like I won't even comment that because it's obvious what they are. They're constants. They're in all caps, and it's pretty simple. It's pretty obvious what they do. And like these two are passed immediately. It's obvious what they are. This variable creates a new object of class game and passes in the config that we make up here. Preload is for preloading the images. So some of these we're not using. I feel kind of hesitant to delete some of them, but for example, I think I'll just comment them out for now. We're not using sky or space. We're also not using ground. I'll leave them in the assets for now. We are using the other ones. And everything works just fine. Okay, great. So these were some debugging things from yesterday when I was trying to figure out what was going on with the array. We're going to get rid of those. Same thing here. Same thing all here. These were all debugging, trying to figure out what was going on with that object. Or that array, rather. This sets the camera. You can see it. It's a camera. It's actually zoomed in 1.2 times what it would be otherwise. This is how the level's generated. It's just a multi-dimensional array. And it corresponds to these different tiles here. So that's how I do it. And then how I assign which tiles are which and which ones get words are down here. I do a double for loop, I and j, and it goes through the multi-dimensional array. That's why there are 2 indices here. And it sees if it has an index of 2. So you can see here in the multi-dimensional array, you have a 5x5, 25 tiles in the multi-dimensional array. And if it has the index of 2, which it does, then it assigns them a different value, and then we later append the text to those values. And we also assign it a unique ID, which is important for determining which tile the player selects, right? So we know if he picks church, it sends church, and that's important to know. Okay. Assign the tiles which will be labeled and assign a unique ID. That's what I just said. This is the player generation here. So the first thing we do is, I probably shouldn't do this first, but that's fine. This is, oh, we have to add physics before we add them. Okay. That's good. Add physics. Okay. We iterate through, and then we add a player, and that's another function down here. This is to keep track of how many players are in the game, which is sent from a server-side function. Music's kind of loud here. Okay. This is when a new player joins the game, it knows to add it. This is when a player quits, it knows to get rid of that player. It actually destroys the object. This is every time that the player moves, it knows to update it for the other players in the game. So like, for example, that function's called every time this guy moves over here. That's that function at work right there. And I see, too, that this guy, oh, that's because it's not this client. So he'll actually be under, but then on this screen, he should be over. Yeah, okay, no problem. All right, that's that. This is the comment I just made. Okay, text assignment. Okay, and after I fixed that array problem, I said why this has to happen. Okay, this is where the text gets assigned to the tiles. So back up here, we specified which tiles have an index of 2, and we assigned them the property label. And then here, what we're doing is we iterate over each one, and we add text to it, and we specify what kind. This allows keyboard input. This is a phase of 3 API call. Down here, oh, this is for the chat over here. You can actually chat. One thing I need to do here is append the player name. I haven't made it so that players can choose their own names yet. Once players can choose their own names, prepend player to each message so that everybody knows who's typing, rather than, like, for example, having somebody say something here and then nobody knows who said what. So the idea will be everybody says it. But right now, the player name are just like a random socket ID, so it's not very useful. And that's why it's not in the game yet. But that's the idea. Okay, that's the to-do for that. Okay, so that's the chat. Eval message is a debug function that I wrote in. This is an event message, actually. So eval answer and event message are actually, they're separate for a reason. And the reason is because when I get rid of this eval method on the server, like I have this eval statement down here, this will only run in debug mode because it's very dangerous to have something like this. Basically, you can eval anything on the server. So like right now, if I open up my console here and I type /players, this is actually going to run, it's going to eval the player's object on the server. So you can see I can return the player object here, inspect all its properties, and I can do that with anything on the server, like any variable that lives on the server. For example, if I wanted to look at the word list dot blue team words, I could. Maybe I'm not typing that in. Oh, word list. I think I missed the caps, obviously. Word list with its camel case. Word list dot blue team words. Null. It's a null object. Maybe because it hasn't been passed. Because it's definitely been generated. I'm probably doing something wrong. Okay, we're gonna forget that for now. Let's look at something else that I could look at on the server, like players object. I guess I could see if I wanted to. I guess we can see what port the server's running. And it's just bad. It's like a bad idea. We can see this is the function for the Express server. It's like it's never something that you would want to push to production because it's already dangerous enough without that. So that's what that does. The event message, by default, it sends a black, so like this is a black event message. And then you can see down here, when players do actions that are events, it will color code based on what team they are. So like I said, this player's on the red team. If we confirm, you can see that this is red text. And I've already prepended the player name here, but it's just random. Just random for now, until folks are able to pick their own names, is the idea. Okay, eval answer, this is for that thing I just showed you, the command mode. This is, again, this is the chat box here. And if we're in debug mode only, then we allow for the command to be sent with a slash. Otherwise, it can only be a chat message. So obviously, when we come out of debug mode, this won't happen. I could also delete the code, but it's easier just to control it with a debug flag up here at the top. These are the event listeners for updating the document, the DOM, when the socket messages come from the server. This is what tells the DOM to append these messages as a list. I actually have a problem here where I can't make spaces at the moment, and I need to look into that. Fix spaces in input box. Can't make. This is the confirm button that you see here. So this pops up, and when you mouse over it, it gets bigger, and when you mouse down, it confirms the word and sends it off to the server. And this is for debugging here. So you can see I confirmed the word suit. It says so here. And then this is the server side. It also knows that I confirmed the word suit. And that ends the create function, actually. And I would like to ensure that we know that. Okay, this is function create. I always like to do this at the end of big functions because I forget, especially when you have a ton of stuff wrapped inside of them. And now I know that that's the end of that. That ends that scope because we have a ton of stuff here. Okay, so function update. This is how we know where the player movement handler is actually. So it's handled client side, which isn't ideal, though it is validated on the server. So you can see that the velocity and all that stuff gets set, but actually where it goes is set on the server, and it's all valid. It's all validated. It's not perfect yet, though. And for performance reasons, I actually have this old position object, and it says only update the player's movement if the position is changed, so that it's not like constantly pinging the server. Otherwise, it would, if the guy's just sitting here, it sends a ping to the server every second, hey, I'm here, hey, I'm here, hey, I'm here, you know, really fast, and that gets old. So the idea is, unless they're moving, it's not making that call. So that's the idea there. Current tile. I don't actually know. I am using that right now, I think. Yeah. What this does is, this is for the highlighting and for recognizing which tile the player's on. So there's a callback on whichever tile it goes over, and it changes the tint based on their team. You can see if the index is 2 and their team and the toggle button properties on, then highlight it based on their team. Otherwise, clear it, and then when you step off that tile, take off the highlight. Some work needs to be done here, and it's in a try-catch block. The reason is because, for example, if the player walks up here and wants to go off the map without that, it'll break because it's trying to reference an object that doesn't exist. So we have to catch it, and then we have a wrap function which puts it on the other side of the screen, which prevents that. So I don't think that that's breakable at the moment. There's nothing actually in the catch block. It just says don't do anything. I know it's going to happen. And that actually gets caught every time they try to step off the world map. This is the AddPlayer function from before. It steps through. We need this self object passed in from the sing.create. Otherwise, it wouldn't work. Like if we called this dot, it would be referring to this function's this, and that's not what we need. That's why everything here has to be self. This creates the player sprite, where it goes, what the name's going to be. This all comes from the server. That's what player info is. It's the information passed from the server. What is their name going to be? What team are they on? And then it's going to do some other stuff here that I haven't worked out yet. This sets up the animations for each of the various directions and what they're doing if they're standing still. This adds a collider with the platforms so we know if they're touching. And lastly, this says always follow the camera. And in fact, I don't think, oh, this is in the AddPlayer function. I thought that was an update. Yeah, this is when you make a player that is the client's player, not another player. Make sure the camera follows that player, and that's why the camera moves with us. So kind of a really nice one-line API call that does a lot for us. This is for the other players. Create button. And then down here is like my debugging graveyard. And I usually do this on projects in case I need to reference something or forget something, like this was an idea to add bitmap text that works, so I keep it in the graveyard. And then this was for cloning an array, which actually I'm not going to use and I don't need anymore, so that can go away. And then these were like some calls to actually pull some objects out of the game that I needed before. So that's that for game.js. Phaser.js is actually the game library that I'm using. Nothing in here is going to be relevant to what I need. I'm going to leave this completely alone. I'll never change anything in here. All I will do is use this API to make stuff in the actual game. So that's fine. Index is fine too. You can see I have like the pregame lobby stuff being built here before they actually get into the game. And then everything else that's live is all the items that you see here. Settings is a admin page in progress. This will require authorization, but somebody will be able to go here and control the various settings for the game. If something goes wrong, they can start the game, reset the game, kick or ban players, so on and so forth at that screen. And that's being worked out. What happened here? Clone array is not defined. Where do I call clone array? Obviously not there. Oh shit, I do need that function. I am using it. That's how I'm cloning the array. Okay, I guess I am using that. So this should not be in the graveyard if I'm using it. It needs to go here. I guess in JavaScript you can't directly copy it with an equal sign, so you have to iterate through. And I believe even this is what they call a shallow copy, meaning it's not essentially creating a new space for the array in memory, but pointing to it. So I think that this might have to be optimized, but that's like a problem for another time. That's not actually what I'm concerned about right now. Okay, so that's good for game index settings. The CSS don't need to mess with. These are all the assets, the node modules. Now onto the server. This I think is pretty good. Pretty self-explanatory. These are the node modules. This is the word bank class that I created. This sets up the server. This allows only index.html to be served if the root path, which is this, is requested. So if you go to localhost 8000, you can only get index. You can't get anything else. And then this is the settings screen that I just showed you. It only will serve that settings screen. And then sets that up. This is the socket logic, actually really easy. This is the error method, and then this tells it to start listening on this port, 8000. Okay, here we go. This is when I was debugging the various arrays coming out of the word list object, which is created from the player or from the word bank class. Don't need that anymore. And then this is the meat of the server, the onConnect function. So basically, every time it creates a new socket, like what to do with it and how to emit various things back to the client. And you can see all the methods are basically the same on the client as they are on the server. Because, like for example, when player movement, when the socket receives player movement, then it runs this function. And that's all there really is to sockets. And how does it receive player movement in the first place? Well, if we come here and we say player movement, that's player moved, we can see that if the player's changed position, then it emits player movement with an object defining the player's current X, Y, direction, rotation, and that's it. And then it catches it here. And so actually, I think that still, like a savvy player could probably cheat if they knew how to dig into the console and adjust their X or Y position. But for this game, it's actually not that important. If they move to another location, it gives them no advantage. But when I turn this into a different game where the player's position does matter, this will not be able to be submitted from the client side. They'll be able to submit what they think their current position is, but then it'll be up to the server to ultimately decide. Because right now, all it does is catch those properties from that object, the X, Y, rotation and direction, and then it says to all the players, this is where that player went in the player moved socket emit. And in an actual game where it matters, where you can't have people determining their own location, that will all have to be determined on the server rather than the client. So yeah, I think that is good. I'm short on time. I plan on coming back tomorrow and working on the next part of the game. So, and let's just map that out real quick before I jump off here. Okay. So what are going to be some of the next things to do? One is going to need to be to either decide to create a login screen where you choose a name and team, or have it on screen on all times, at all times. And the idea here is like, you know, do we want people to be able to change their team or name at will? Like, kind of, you know what I mean? This isn't really a game that's going to be shipped to people I don't know. And I want people to be able to change teams or change their name as they do. So maybe we put like a name thing up here or over on the side or down here or something, but we want people to be able to do that versus like the only way they can change it once they come in is to reload the client or reload the game. So I'm leaning towards keeping it on screen at all times. Then, what do we need? We need something to either start the game, or determine when a game starts. I'm thinking about either a button on the client itself, which is kind of a bad idea because that means anybody can start the game, and like when you play with friends, they get nefarious and they want to mash stuff. So probably a bad idea. Or put it in the settings screen, which I think is a better idea. Okay. So that's that. Start the game. Okay, once the game starts, we already know what the red team words, the blue team, the neutral, and the assassin word are. So then we need to determine like score, like spy master properties. They will need to determine how many words they have to lock in, how many words they want their team to guess, and then the team has to try to guess those. And then if they guess the wrong word, game logic, spy master sets words, amount of words, all players on team must lock in word. If they guess other team's word, neutral word, or assassin word. And then that goes back to score. And that's like pretty close to the end. I think with those 5 things in the game, we have a score, we have spy master properties, game logic, and then so that'll be it. And so basically a bunch of people will join the game. Maybe these won't be generated yet, these words, until we say start game, and then these will generate. And then the players will choose their team, red team, blue team, and then they will elect, players choose teams. I guess I'll just append it. Oops. 6 players choose teams. 7. Let's see here. So they choose a team. Players choose spy master for that. Teams choose spy master for that game. All right. Spy master reveals. Spy master gets full map. He knows what his team's words are and what they're. I don't know. I need to look in the actual game. In the actual game, does the spy master know which word is the assassin? Or do they only know the neutral words? Because that's important. I do believe they know, they see the whole board, but I'm not sure. Okay. So let's see, the players all log in. They choose a name. They choose a team. Players choose names. maybe before that, we make different characters. Players choose avatars, because that'll be pretty boring if they all have the same characters. So players choose avatars, players choose names, players choose teams, teams choose their spy master for that game. The spy master gets full map, and then I guess game logic comes next. Yeah, so I think what I'll do tomorrow is work on fixing these 2 bugs, finishing these 10 tasks, and then like we should be pretty close to completing this game by this weekend. And then I think the idea will be to take the knowledge learned with the multiplayer stuff, the sockets and multiplayers, and what we learn in these lessons here after this game's complete, and then apply them to like an RPG MMO type game. So yeah, thanks if you stopped by today, and I am planning on working on this weekend. So Happy New Year. Yeah, have a great 2021. I hope it's better than